Out of, I think it's about 300 songs that John and I wrote together, we never had a dry session.
At 80, Paul McCartney has lived a life few could imagine. One filled with adoration, loss, melodies that defined generations, and memories inked into the history of music itself. And yet, after decades of being asked the same question, "What's your favorite Beatles song?" he always danced around the answer. Maybe it was too hard to choose, maybe too emotional. After all, every song carried something, a moment in time, a friendship, a fracture, a farewell. But now, in the soft twilight of his 8th decade, Sir Paul has finally opened up with quiet honesty. In a candid conversation surrounded by warmth, laughter, and reflection, he named the 5 Beatles songs that still live deepest in his heart. Some were obvious, others surprising. Each one is a portal to a story, of creation, of brotherhood, of loss. These aren't just his favorites musically. They're songs tethered to people he loved, struggles he survived, and truths he's only now ready to share. With each title came a memory, a studio moment with John, a tearful writing session alone, a harmony that nearly didn't happen. And with each story, Paul peeled back the curtain just a little more, revealing what these songs really meant, not just to the world, but to the boy from Liverpool who wrote them. This is more than a ranking. It's a farewell letter, a confession, and perhaps a quiet nod to the legacy he'll leave behind. These are the 5 Beatles songs that Paul McCartney will carry with him. Always. When Paul McCartney finally revealed the first song on his list, there was a pause, gentle, thoughtful, as though he was searching not just for a memory, but for a feeling that had never fully left him. And then he said it, almost shyly, here, there, and everywhere. It wasn't one of the band's chart-topping anthems or revolutionary sonic experiments. It was quiet, subtle, beautiful, and for Paul, deeply personal. He recalled the summer of 1966, recording Revolver, a time of experimentation, discovery, and tension when the Beatles were stretching beyond the boundaries of pop music into something far more ambitious. But in the middle of that chaos, here, there, and everywhere emerged from a place of tenderness. Paul had been listening to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, in awe of the emotional depth and layered harmonies of God Only Knows. That song struck him. It moved him in a way he wasn't prepared for. And in response, he sat down with his acoustic guitar and began writing something equally soft, equally profound. He composed it one morning outside John's house in Weybridge, the sunlight warming the garden, birds chirping faintly in the distance. In that moment, music wasn't about innovation or pressure. It was about heart. And when he played it for the band, something shifted. Even John, often critical, admired it, calling it Paul's best. George added the gentle lead guitar. Ringo played with restraint, and when it came together in the studio, it felt perfect. Not flashy, but full. Paul later said the lyrics captured his deepest longing, to be in love, to stay in love, to grow old in it. He wasn't writing for the charts. He was writing for someone he adored, and perhaps for the version of himself that believed in something soft and lasting. In naming it one of his favorites, Paul wasn't just choosing a song. He was choosing a memory, a moment where the Beatles were still a unit, where the weight of fame hadn't yet cracked their foundation. He was choosing something innocent, something untouched. And even now, decades later, when he sings it live, his voice softens, his eyes sometimes close. Because Here, There, and Everywhere wasn't just a song. It was a whisper from the past, a reminder of love's simplest truths. For Paul, it was one of those rare creations that required no fixing, no second-guessing. Just melody and meaning gently aligned. And in the long list of Beatles' masterpieces, it's the one he returns to when he wants to feel home again. The second song Paul McCartney chose came with a shadow, a weight of grief that still lingers in his voice when he speaks of it. He didn't hesitate when he said the title. Yesterday. There was a certain stillness in the room when he said it, like even he knew it had become more than just a song. It had become a monument, a piece of music that felt bigger than the Beatles, bigger than himself. Paul remembered waking up in a small room in the attic of Jane Asher's family home, the melody already fully formed in his mind. He was convinced he must have heard it somewhere before. It felt too perfect to be new. For weeks he played it for people, asking, "Is this someone else's song?" But it wasn't, it was his. And yet, he treated it with humility, even giving it the working title Scrambled Eggs as a joke while he searched for the real words. The final lyrics, simple and aching, came not from a desire to impress, but from something deeper, an honest reflection of change, of loss, of something slipping away that could never quite be retrieved. The band didn't even appear on the recording. It was just Paul, alone with a string quartet, one of the first times the Beatles allowed that kind of divergence. And perhaps that's why it meant so much to him. It was raw, unfiltered, vulnerable. Even now, he admits, he doesn't always enjoy singing it live. It brings back memories of people he's lost. His mother, John, George. It reminds him of the days when everything seemed possible, before the machinery of fame made everything complicated. And it's in that vulnerability that the song still lives, not just as a melody, but as a confession. For Paul, Yesterday is not a song of regret. It's a song of understanding, of accepting that some things change, some things break, and sometimes the only thing left is the memory of how it used to feel. And if you've ever had a song that stays with you like that, one that plays like a whisper in your mind, even after the world moves on, consider liking this video, subscribing for more true music stories, and sharing your own connection in the comments. Because just like Paul, we all carry melodies that hold our memories. Yesterday wasn't just a hit, it was a mirror. And every time Paul plays it, he looks into that mirror again. Not as a Beatle, not as a legend, but as a man who once dreamed, lost, and remembered. The third song Paul McCartney named wasn't just a favorite. It was a bridge, a memory, a wound, and a healing all at once. Strawberry Fields Forever. Yes, it was written by John, not Paul. But when Paul speaks of it, there's a kind of reverence in his tone, a solemn recognition of its brilliance and the man behind it. It wasn't a typical choice. Most people expected Paul to lean toward songs he had written, melodies born directly from his own hands. But this one was different. This one, he said, reminded him of John at his most vulnerable, and perhaps at his most misunderstood. Paul vividly recalled the recording sessions. How John came in with this dreamy, surreal song about childhood, longing, and dislocation. It wasn't the sweet nostalgia people often read into it. It was haunting. John was reaching back to a time before the fame, before the chaos, trying to locate something real in a life that had become increasingly artificial. And Paul saw that. He saw through the sarcasm, through the Lennon armor, into the child who never stopped hurting. What makes Strawberry Fields Forever so precious to Paul isn't just the music, it's what it meant in their friendship. The process of building it was painful and messy. The song changed keys, tempos, time signatures. They recorded take after take. George Martin had to splice two versions together just to make it work. And yet, despite all the technical brilliance, what Paul remembers most was watching John push himself, wanting so badly to get it right, to say something honest in a world that rarely gave him the space to. In that studio, Paul wasn't just a bandmate. He was a witness to something sacred. A man trying to explain who he was through chords and lyrics and tape reels. And as the years went on, and the band fractured, and words were said that couldn't be taken back, that song remained untouched. Paul would later say that Strawberry Fields was one of the few moments when he truly saw John. Not as a legend, not as a partner, not as a rival, but as a soul. And now, decades after John's death, when Paul hears those first few notes, he doesn't just hear a song, he hears a goodbye they never got to say. A conversation that only ever happened through music. Choosing Strawberry Fields Forever wasn't just an act of admiration. It was an act of love, a tribute to the boy who grew up beside him in Liverpool, to the man who changed the world with a pen and a voice, and to the complicated, beautiful bond they shared, one that outlived the band, the bitterness, and even time itself. The final song Paul McCartney named caught everyone off guard, not because it was obscure, but because it had never seemed to receive the same reverence as the others. Yet Paul said it with clarity, as if it had always been circling quietly in the background, waiting to be acknowledged. For no one. From Revolver, nestled between louder, more experimental tracks, this song had slipped under the radar for many. But for Paul, It was a deeply personal composition, one that had sat closest to his heart for decades, silently aging with him. He wrote it during the slow, painful unraveling of a relationship. And unlike many of his early love songs, it didn't come with sentimentality or hope. It came with resignation. There's no begging, no dramatic ending, just the quiet ache of watching someone fall out of love with you. At the time, Paul was with Jane Asher, and while he never confirmed it publicly, many believed this song was a reflection of the emotional distance that had begun creeping between them. Paul wrote the lyrics in a Swiss chalet during a ski trip that had grown